Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody in the room. This is a very difficult topic, as people have noted, and I'm here to address it from a very personal point of view. As a child, I was a transgender kid. I was insistent, persistent, and consistent. I hated myself as a girl, and I did everything I could to present as a boy. And I'm speaking about this today because there are thousands of parents and detransitioners who would like to speak out about this, but who can't because they're being bullied, or they're being told that they'll lose their job. They're being deplatformed. And so I'm speaking on their behalf and on my behalf as that little girl who was transgender, and so thankful that I wasn't put on puberty blockers to retard my growth and development. I wasn't put on cross-sex hormones that would permanently damage my body, with the combination of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones that would have sterilized me. And yes, that combination, if given prepubescently, does result in sterility. I feel like I am called to speak for all of these detransitioners and parents because they are afraid to speak. And the fact that they're afraid to speak needs to tell us something. They're afraid to come up here and tell their authentic story of having been trans-identified and detransitioning and being bullied and being abused and losing their friends and losing their jobs and facing threats of violence. These are often children who, like me, were traumatized as children. The reason I developed a transgender identity is that I was sexually assaulted as a child. During that sexual assault, my brain came up with the idea that if I was a boy, that would never happen to me again. And that is why I decided I wasn't going to be a girl anymore. I hated myself. I hated what happened. And I was convinced the only way I could keep myself safe is to be a boy. And I'm not the only one. I've talked to hundreds of detransitioners who've had similar stories of sexual assault. I talked to my dear friend Billy Burley, who went through the full medical transition. And he finally realized his hatred for his penis that he had cut off was the result of a sexual assault by his swim coach. Now when these kids come forward and they say they feel better when they transition, I am so sure they do. I am not discounting what they say. I'm not trying to erase their pain. I'm not trying to be hateful. I want to be compassionate and loving to these kids who are struggling with such intense feelings. These feelings of gender dysphoria are real. But rather than telling the child that they're inherently flawed and that they're born in the wrong body, and the only way that they can survive themselves is to basically kill who they are and become another person. That's a horrible message to give to any child, especially a child who's endured some kind of trauma like I did. Because if I had been given that message, I would have continued to believe that that sexual assault was my fault and that the only way to stay safe is to be a boy. In addition, testosterone is a controlled substance, and it would make any single female in here, if we start taking it, feel like $1 million. We should not be giving children controlled substances, steroids, in order to make them feel better when they're struggling with mental health issues. That's a horrible disservice. We're basically encouraging them to dissociate, to run away from their feelings, to run away from themselves, and to take a drug that's going to, in the short term, help them to feel better, and in the long term, permanently damage their bodies, and in the long term, prevent them from getting the help that they need to understand the difficult feelings that they're having in the first place. I hear Dr. Liston and other doctors who talk about the medical expertise and the standards of care, and I want to acknowledge that, generally speaking, I have great respect for doctors. However, they have gotten it wrong in the past, and this is one of those instances where they're getting it wrong. And this has become a political ideology. It's almost akin to a state-sponsored religious belief that a child can somehow be born in the wrong body, that's a mystical view, not a medical view. And the idea that we should allow that child to, or encourage that child to engage in medical interventions, puberty blockers, they block puberty. They're a developmental delay. They're retarding that child's growth and development. That's what they do. This is one of those instances, like the opioid epidemic, like thalidomide, like lobotomies, where doctors have gotten it terribly wrong, and where we have to stand up and put in some restrictions so that they can't keep providing this care to children when what these children really need is love and support. This is not about erasing transgender children. This is about providing them the care that they need. This is anything but erasing them. This is the opposite of erasing them. Transing them is erasing them. If I had been transed, I wouldn't be here today as a woman and a mother and a wife and a daughter. I wouldn't even have my beautiful children. The fact that these children are going to have that choice taken away from them when they don't even have a sense of what it's like to be a grown-up is heartbreaking to me, and that's why I'm here. Not because I want to be here telling you my story, not because I want to be here talking about this kind of pain that I have, but to let you know that children are resilient and they can make it through these difficult feelings. They can survive whatever it is that's causing that dysphoria if they're supported, if they're not told they were born in the wrong body, if they're not encouraged to dissociate and become a different person. So I ask you, don't erase these children with gender dysphoria. Love them and support them and care for them. And I thank you so much, and I'm sorry for my emotional testimony.